and Pavan Sarovar Devi Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Surmya Vrindavan Prabhuji and Pavan Mataji. Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mataji and Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Lakshmi Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karna Devi Dasi from
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Mataji. Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Do we have any more introductions?
Hare Krishna, Lakshmi Mataji. This is Kamadiki Dasi from Bhagavatam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kamadika Mataji. Danvat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Shall we get started, Mataji?
I think,
Prabhuji is not on the call yet.
yeah, I know. I'm thinking 4 minutes.
Prabhuji said we need to read the verse.
Okay, yeah, then let's get started, I guess. Sure, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. We are extremely fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji here with us today. And Prabhuji would be enlightening us by discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 13, and verse 1 and 2. But before we dive into this nectarine class, I will request Aditi Mataji to share a brief introduction about today's speaker, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji. With that, Hare Krishna, Aditi Mataji, Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Over to you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. I'm very fortunate to introduce once again His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji this morning. And this is a brief introduction for him. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, is a monk, mentor, and spiritual author, an electronics and communication engineer graduate. He worked as software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporation. Seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection, all due to lack of spirituality, he felt inspired to dedicate his life to the cause of sharing the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhuji is the author of the world's only Gita daily feature, wherein he writes daily a 300-word inspirational reflection on a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. As of now, he has written over 1,700 Gita meditations that are posted in www.gitadaily.com. He also answers questions by seekers on his site, www.thespiritualscientist.com, where his over 3,500 audio answers and several hundred articles are available. He travels all over the world from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in universities such as Princeton and Cambridge, and companies such as Intel and Microsoft. Over to you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Aditi Mataji, for introducing our today's speaker, Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji, with us, to us. Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for giving us your valuable time and association this morning and enlightening us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. Without further ado, I would like to request you to please take over from here.
Hare Krishna, Lakshmi Mataji. Since Prabhuji has not joined, we'll read the verse.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we are reading from the 6th canto, 13th chapter, text 1 and 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 1. Sri Shuka Vacha Vritre hate trayo loka vinasakrena bhurida sapalahya abhavan sadhyo vijvara nivratendriya. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O King Parikshit, who are so charitably disposed, when Vritrasura was killed, all the presiding deities and everyone else in the 3 planetary systems was immediately pleased and free from trouble. Everyone, that is, except Indra. Text 2. Devarshi Pitra Bhutani Daitya Devanugan Swayam Prati Jagmo Swadhishnyayini Brahme Sendra Dayastata. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada. Yes. Thereafter, the demigods, the great saintly persons, the inhabitants of Pitraloka and Bhutaloka, the demons, the followers of the demigods, and also Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the demigods subordinate to Indra, all returned to their respective homes. While departing, however, no one spoke to Indra. Purport. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Brahmesendraya iti indrasya swadhishnya gamanam nopapadyate vritavadha shana eva brahmahatyopodravya prapte. Tasmat tata itya anena manasa sarovarad agatya pravartitad ashwamedhat parata iti vyakheyam. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the other demigods returned to their respective abodes, but Indra did not, for he was disturbed at having killed Vritrasura, who was actually a Brahmana. After killing Vritrasura, Indra went to the Manasa Sarovar lake to become free from the sinful reactions. When he left the lake, he performed an Ashwamedha Yajna and then returned to his own abode. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji, I think Prabhuji has already joined.
Prabhuji has joined?
I see.
Yeah, I see him.
Doesn't have audio though.
Should I read the introduction?
I think you're okay, Mataji.
He's muted, I think. He's joined.
I see him.
Hare Krishna Shamagauri Mataji, did Prabhuji say he will join from 2 devices? I'm seeing only one.
Mataji, he joined from 2 devices.
I see Prabhuji now. Yeah. But both devices don't have audio.
Yeah, he's getting connected with one, I think, Mataji.
It shows that.
Yeah, he's connected.
Prabhuji, we cannot hear you.
Ask him to unmute one device. I don't know.
Hare Krishna, am I audible now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhuji.
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sorry,
Dandavat
Prabhuji.
Pranam.
Dandavat. So can you
Okay,
get me to
Prabhuji.
share the screen on my other? Okay, thank you. Om Gyan Tinirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And in this particular section of the Bhagavatam, one of the most ethically confusing situations is being described, and it reflects the complexity of life in the real world also. So here, let's see what has happened. If we look at the timeline, the story is describing overall how things are moving forward. Just give me a minute, sorry. Okay. So we have the situation where Vritrasur's appearance, it was due to it was a result eventually of Indra killing a Brahmana. That was Vishwarupa, Vritrasur's brother in one sense, because both were created by the desire of the same father. So here, before this, when Vishwarupa was killed, Indra suffered some sinful reactions, which he distributed. Then after that, so here Indra gets reactions. So he suffers the reactions, he distributes the reactions, and then many things happen. After that, he's defeated by Vritrasur. I'm going over a quick summary. These incidents are much more complicated. He's defeated by Vritrasur. Then he is empowered by Lord Vishnu's instruction to Dadichi's weapon. The weapon by, it is not exactly Dadichi's weapon, but Dadichi's body is made into a weapon. And then he's again defeated by Indra, by Vritrasur rather. Indra is defeated by Vritrasur. Then he is instructed by Vritrasur. He says, you fight, you do your duty. And then he kills Vritrasur. And now after that is described that he gets reactions. He'll get reactions. Reactions to killing Vritrasur. So what exactly is going on over here? Why is something like this happening? That if we consider at one level, Indra's action had multiple justification. Generally, when we do an action, what is the justification? What is the basis for their action? If we consider, so Indra's action had the justification that a demon was attacking, demons were attacking heavens led by Vritrasur. So he had a duty to protect them, attacking the gods. So that was his duty of protection. Then further, he had taken shelter of Vishnu. And he had done that through taking shelter of Vishnu and got astra through a Brahmana's body. Through a Brahmana's body. Now that Brahmana had given up his body. I'm repeating this for a different perspective. No, this is a chronology of events above, but this is the justification. So taking shelter of Vishnu, praying to Vishnu is a good thing. Yeah, we got astra. The process was unusual, to say the least, but still, the Brahmana's body was involved. And then, as the subsequent verses will describe, that Brahmanas had also assured him, when he had some hesitation about killing Vritrasur, who was a Brahmana, the Brahmanas and Devtas, as we'll be seeing in the next verses, assured him that Ashwamedha Yajna can be performed, and by that, if there is any sinful reaction, Ashwamedha Yajna to counter sinful reactions. So in one sense, he can say that I have multiple justifications for doing what I'm doing. And yet we were finding, so the first, we could say the Kshatriya duty. The second is that he has done dharma, he's done bhakti, and then he has taken guidance of a Brahmana also. This is dharma to protect. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that Vipra Dharma Achyut Ashrayaha. It is describing the Pandavas that Bhishma is lamenting, Aho Kashtam Aho Anyayam Yadyuyam Dharmanandana Jivitum Naratam Klishtam Vipra Dharma Achyut Ashrayaha. So he says that how terrible it is that you have suffered in so many ways. You didn't deserve to suffer because you have taken shelter of Vipra Dharma Achyut Ashrayaha. How is it that such sufferings have come despite that happening? Now, if you see, in one sense, we can say here also fighting against the Asuras is a dharma of the Devatas. And he has, in one sense, taken shelter of Achyuta. And he has also taken shelter of Vipra. It is the Vipra. So, is Vipra Dharma Achyutashrayaha. So Indra's action seems to be well guided. It is guided and it is based in a very, you could say, it couldn't be, there could be a safer action. So, and the Bhagavatam describes that just like the Pandavas, Bhishma is lamenting that how is it that despite you having all these three things, Vipra Dharma Achyutashraya, still you had to suffer like this. So Indra will also have to suffer. Now, of course, there's a world of difference between Indra's stature and the Pandava stature. At one level, from the cosmic perspective, if we consider, Indra is in Swarga, which in one sense is beyond karma. We are on the Prithvi Loka. The Pandavas had also come on Prithvi. So Indra was here. And the question often comes up that is there karma in the heavenly world? Does the law of karma apply over there? Well, yes and no. I'll explain that shortly. But before I go there, the point is that Indra at one level is situated higher than the Pandavas. But the situation is in some way similar. So this is more from a cosmic perspective. And cosmic perspective is also a pious perspective. The perspective of piety. Piety means punya. So anybody who has got to heaven, they must have done some punya, only by that they have gone to heaven. So in that sense, Indra is above the Pandavas. However, there is another perspective, and that is the bhakti perspective. So if we consider from the bhakti perspective, things are significantly different. This was the perspective of punya. But I use our cosmic perspective because in the cosmos, if somebody goes to higher planets, that means they have done some punya before. In this, we can say Indra is somewhere down. He is a Mishra Bhakta. He's a mixed devotee. Whereas the Pandavas are somewhere near the top. They are pure devotees. They're Shuddha Bhaktas, Kevala Bhaktas. Now, in this sense, the Pandavas are much higher than the king of heaven, Indra. So, in terms of their inner consciousness, there is a huge level of difference. And yet, in terms of outer complications, they do face complications. So, Indra is facing complications, the Pandavas are facing complications. So, the point is that just because we do something that seems to be good to us, that we are guided to, that it will be good, that does not necessarily mean that there will be good results all the time. What does that mean? Gahana karmano gati. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, he says that the way karma works is gahan. It's 417 in the Gita, that gahan is dense, it's complicated, it's intricate, it's sometimes even inexplicable. Gatihi, in one sense, is progress. So what it means is that if we consider this action and this as a reaction, so it's not just that simple. If I do there's this broad principle of karma is there. In principle, the idea of karma is accountability, that we are held responsible for our actions. But in reality, it does not always work out that if I do a good action, then immediately I will get a good reaction. It doesn't necessarily work out like that. Why doesn't it work out like that? Because sometimes things get delayed. Sometimes things are, they don't, G refers to good. So good action does not necessarily lead to good reaction immediately. That's because there are multiple factors which come in. And in real life, what is a good action? What is a bad action? That is also not so easy to determine. In fact, the whole Mahabharata, in one sense, is a search for understanding what is dharma. And dharma essentially means good action, or not necessarily good, the right action or the good action. It is not necessarily in just simply a sense of punya, but what is the right thing to do? What is the responsible thing to do? So was when Yudhishthir was told to gamble by his elders, Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra sent that message through Vidura. So was Yudhishthir right in obeying his elders? Was he wrong in obeying his elders? What was the right thing to do for him? It's not that easy to determine. You see, Yudhishthir, what happens over there, we'll come back to Indra, but I'm just illustrating this complexity over here, that if we consider, even for Yudhishthir Maharaj, just after the Ashwamedha Yajna, what was Yudhishthir's situation? His situation was that now he was the emperor of the world, and Vyasadeva had told him, when he had sought Vyasadev's blessings after he had been enthroned as the emperor, after the Rajasuya Yajna had been performed. So here they had converted, before this, they had converted Khandava Prastha into such a prosperous and powerful kingdom that it came to be known as Indraprastha. So when they had done that, then he was enthroned. So at that time he had said, please bless me so that I can rule virtuously. And Vyasadeva said, O king, I see that there's going to be a huge war. And after that war, you will be able to reign prosperously and peacefully. Yudhishthira starts thinking that, oh, maybe I should be trying to avoid a war. I don't want a war to happen just for me to be the king. So he has his own reasoning. This is described in the Mahabharata. He says that what he's trying to reason backward. What is the cause of wars? He says wars are caused by unresolved differences. If there are differences which don't get resolved, then they get escalated. And then that leads to war. What is the cause of unresolved differences? He says, he reasons that it is disobedience of authority. In general, when two people have difference of opinion, then if there is some authority figure whose decision is accepted, except two people have a property dispute and they go to court, and the court makes a decision in a particular side's favor, and if the other side doesn't accept, then there'll be violence. If they accept, then okay, then the issue ends. They may not be satisfied, but there's acceptance. So he said that the authorities for him, he's himself the king, so his authorities are his elders. So he said, therefore, to avoid this whole change from happening, I will always obey my elders. So he doesn't want this whole chain to happen. His intention is noble. This is how this chain can be avoided. But little does he know that his elders will ask him to do something which will lead to a war. So is obeying elders a good thing or a bad thing? Well, you could say that he was trying to avoid a war. He was trying to do that which was right. But it led to such a disaster. He lost his entire kingdom. Draupadi was dishonored. Of course, Krishna saved her from being dishonored. But just being subjected to that whole thing was mortifying, was traumatic. So all this happened. Now, how did Yudhishthira respond to that? So he was acting in a mood of, I want to do the right thing. But what is the right thing to do? It's very difficult to know that. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he gambled and lost so many things, he lost almost everything. It is amazing what Yudhishthira Maharaj's response was. If we consider, there was this 13 years Vanavas, 13 years exile. Now, in this exile, at the start, it was precipitated by gambling. He gambled and lost everything. But in the last year, where he was supposed to be in incognito exile, he was supposed to be they were supposed to live undetected. So what was the profession that Yudhishthira chose to have? Like Arjuna became a dancer, which was Arjuna was an embodiment of virility, and he took on the garb of a eunuch who was a dance teacher, Brihanalla. So what was the profession that Yudhishthira took up? Actually, Yudhishthira became not exactly a gambler. It was more like a gambling partner for the king. He became Kanka. So the main activity was that he was supposed to entertain the king for the Matsya king. And that's why at one particular time when the king gets angry with him, he just takes the gambling dice and hurls it at Yudhishthira, and it hits Yudhishthira on the head, and Yudhishthira's head starts bleeding. But the point is that the very activity that led him into trouble, now he's not only doing that activity, but he's actually making that his profession in one sense. At least he's professing that it is his profession. Professing means he's acting as if, he's pretending as if it is profession. Why? Because Yudhishthira, in this period of exile, he trained himself in gambling. The sages in the forest knew many things. and I think the sage name was Vishrava. Uh, I'm not sure exactly the sage name, but there was a sage who was supposed to be very expert in gambling, and Yudhishthira studied under him and became expert at gambling. Now, if gambling had got him into so much trouble, why gamble again? The point was, Yudhishthira knew as a Kshatriya, if he's challenged, he can't refuse. It was quite likely that at the end of their exile, Duryodhana might challenge him again for a gambling match. And he would try to avoid it. But he didn't want to be caught unawares. He didn't want to be caught unawares. So he prepared himself. He prepared himself. And if there had been a gambling match again, now Yudhishthira would have been able to match Shakuni. He had made himself that proficient. Shakuni was, of course, a professional gamester, but Yudhishthira had also become proficient. So what is the point of this? That the point I'm making is determining the right thing is not easy in life. Even if somebody has the best of intentions, just good intentions does not necessarily guarantee good decisions. Now, good intentions is because I have good decisions. Does that necessarily mean there'll be good decisions? Well, not necessarily. Just because I have guidance from good sources, does that necessarily mean that my decisions will be good? Well, again, it depends. Yudhishthira Maharaj had no bad intentions, but still he gambled. Now, when we are saying good decisions, how are we defining good decisions? It means there will be, here we are defining in terms of, will it lead to have good results? That's what we are saying. Will it necessarily lead to good results? Well, it depends. For Yudhishthira Maharaj, his intention was simply to obey his elders, to do the duty of, as he was expected to respond to a challenge. Now, Kshatriyas, it's not that anybody could drag them to respond to a gambling challenge, but there's certain conduct expected of Kshatriyas, and that is that you should not be cowardly. So if a challenge, you should not flinch from a challenge. Yuddhe chapya palayanam. That does not necessarily mean that they have to necessarily, that they can't explore other options. Yudhishthira Maharaj still tried to persuade, why should we gamble? If we gamble, gambling always leads to dissension and confrontation. Let's avoid it. But he couldn't get his way out of it. But the situation was that, okay, that led to terrible results. Now here, Indra, in one sense, was guided by the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas had told him that, okay, if you perform something like Ashwamedha Yagya, what to speak of killing one Brahmana? Even if you kill the whole universe, it doesn't matter. You will be protected. So now, it will be described that he will have to suffer the sinful reactions thereafter, with no good results that come to him. Now, of course, this was the case of Yudhishthira. We can say Yudhishthira Maharaj had good intentions. Whereas Indra, his intentions are definitely not selfless. He was concerned about his own position as the king of heavens. He wanted to retain that position. And if he had lost that position, he wanted to regain that position. So his intentions were basically retain and regain. Retain means hold on to it so that he never loses it. And if he loses it, he wanted the king of Swarga. He wanted all the pleasures of Swarga. For that, he wanted to regain the position. He lost it. So it is definitely not in one sense, a selfless motive. But Indra was also not a demon. It was not that using the power of Swarga, he was being like a tyrant who would kill innocent people or tyrannize or terrorize. No, he was working doing a decent job. There are, of course, incidents when he gets tempted, he gets angered, and he goes beyond boundaries. So he also will suffer consequences over here. Now, when he suffers consequences, I earlier made this point that, is there the law of karma in Swarga? Well, it depends. See, the law of karma has one basic principle, that we are accountable for our actions. And that principle itself is applicable throughout the universe. The principle is accountability for actions. If you consider that principle is applicable everywhere. And if somebody does wrong actions, especially an action like Brahma Hatya, if somebody offends a Brahmana or kills a Brahmana, then there'll definitely not just reactions, but severe reactions. The accountability for actions is universal. There is no denying this. It's universal. But now specific action-reaction correlation. That means, for this action, you will get this reaction. This action is accepted. This action is allowed. This action is not allowed. That is variable. That means, say, for example, on the earth, if two people cohabit or unite outside marriage, well, that has consequences. There are karmic consequences of that. But say, for example, in the heavens, if somebody does that, something like that with the damsels of heaven, with the apsaras, the specific principles of what is applicable where, that will vary. That which basically what it means is that on earth, if you consider the universe over here, and say this is Swarga, this is earth. Actually, earth is in the middle. Let's put it here. Earth is here. So Swarga and earth, Prithvi, earth. So now, in one sense, you could say the boundaries of karma are like this. That means these are acceptable, allowed actions. This is the boundary for those actions. So certain actions are allowed, certain actions are not allowed. That boundary is much larger for the Swargaloka. There are many actions which they can do over there for which they will not get reactions. But that there are actions for which they are accountable. That there are actions, there are boundaries for them also for their actions. That is something which is universal. So specific forms of sense indulgence, of worldly pleasures, which may not be allowed according to the principles of dharma on earth, may be allowed in heavens. Now there they drink soma. Now soma is not intoxication like it is in this world. It does not necessarily breed tamoguna, but still it gives an intoxicating sense of delight. And that soma is allowed over there. So here, drinking alcohol has consequences. There, not alcohol, but drinking intoxicants, that is allowed over there. So this broader, here two examples of apsaras and soma. This is allowed. So both of these are, say, somewhere here in the purview. They're not here for correlate. They will not, similar things will not be allowed for humans, but they're allowed for the devatas. But still, there are things which are outside this boundary even for them. And one of them, the things which are outside the boundaries is Brahma Aparad. That offending the Brahmanas. For them also, this exists outside that circle. And Brahma Aparad can be in many ways, just disrespecting his guru. Brihaspati gets Indra into trouble. And then what to speak of killing someone? Now, Vritrasur, is he a Brahmana? Is he a Asura? Well, Vritrasur's genealogy is complicated. I'll make two more points and then I will try to bring this all together and then we will have some questions. So if we consider Vritrasur's genealogy is basically where does he come from? His genesis. How is he born? So if we consider, you could consider it from three different levels. At one level, it is Chitraketu cursed and reincarnated. So he is, because of that curse, he has to come in a heaven, in a Asuri body. But it's Chitraketu, who was a virtuous king and who went on to become a great devotee, such a great devotee that he had even darshan of Lord Sankarshan. And even when he was with beautiful women, he was not distracted. He was singing the glories of the Lord even while being in their company. So from his past life's perspective, Chitraketu, it was a great devotee. Now, if we want to consider genealogy, we could consider from the soul perspective, we could consider from the body perspective, we can consider from the lineage perspective. That means, what do I mean by all this? That where did a person come from? We want to know, okay, where was the soul in the previous life? Then we can consider in which Vamsha that person was born. So in terms of his lineage, he was born by the desire of a Brahmana. So in that sense, he was considered to be a Brahmana. It was, although it was not in the normal way of reproduction, but Brahmanas have had mystic powers in the past, and he performed a yajna, and by that he was born. Now, in terms of bodily form, he had the body of a demon. So he literally looked like a Rakshasa, Vritra Asura. So he had a demoniac form. He didn't look like a very attractive person. You see, Duryodhana was also demoniac in mentality, but Duryodhana's form was very much a human form. We had Ravana had a Rakshasa form. He had 10 heads. So his body was demoniac. Dhritarashtra looked deadly, looked dangerous. So when we try to know someone, okay, we may look at that person's complexion and we say, okay, this person probably is from this part of the world. So if people have dark complexion, we may say they are from maybe somewhere like Africa. If somebody has brown complexion, before I came to the West, I had no idea of this word, black and brown, and black and white in between there is brown. We just talk about fair and dark complexions in India, but somebody with brown complexion, probably they are from India or something like that. If somebody has a little more flat nose, we might say that, okay, probably they are from China or that part of the world. So we based on form, we try to determine where they are from. When we want to know where they are from, we can also look at, okay, which family were they born in? So their particular body, their lineage, and then their soul, where does it come from? So if we look at these three, what is most, in terms of what is most obvious, this is the first that is most obvious. When we see someone, we look at their bodily form, and then we try to figure out. Second is, you may try to know their lineage. Okay, which dynasty, which family are you born in? In the past, this was very important. Now also it's important. Not all that important, but when say somebody wants to get married, they want to know which family you belong to, which lineage you are coming from. Now, this 1, 2, 3 is in terms of our capacity to know. From in terms of our capacity to know, the first thing we can know, look at their bodily form, then we can look at their lineage. Then in terms of, we can know the soul. So in terms of our perception, when we are perceiving things, what comes first to us is body, then lineage, and then the soul. Souls means soul's journey. Souls, where were the souls? Where was the soul in the previous life? So previous life and the karma that comes with it. Now, this is how we perceive things generally. But in terms of actual priority, in terms of determining the character of a person, in what actually determines the character of a person? Well, in many ways, the soul and its conditioning, that is what is most important. That determines the priority first. What conditioning the person brought. You can say that it also affects the lineage, and that also is related with the body. But these are secondary. So basically, determining whether somebody is good or bad So when I'm using the word soul, I'm talking more in terms of previous life conditionings. The conditionings that the soul is carrying with them from their previous lives. So now, in one sense, Vritrasura was a demon. He was acting like a demon. He attacked the heavens, and Indra had to fight to protect him. And now Chitraketu, Vritrasura was also Chitraketu, a great devotee. And he was also born from a Brahmana. So when we act, we really don't know where a person is coming from. So Indra, because he killed a Brahmana, he got sinful reactions over there. And it was quite a severe sinful reaction. In fact, he had to flee and he had to hide. The data is described. We can't go into that right now. He had to hide from the sinful reactions, and he had to hide in the Manas Sarovar, perform tapasya over there. For that time period, while he was doing atonement, he actually had to give up the post of Indra. Nahusha had to take up that post. So it means he did have to give up. He did have to go through some sinful reactions. So now it's like somebody is the president of a country, and then something terrible happens under their watch, or something terrible they do, they have to resign. And maybe they have to resign for 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, maybe 1 term. And after 5 years, they come back. So it was something like that for Indra. He had to give up his post. So, Gahana Karmanogati, what is right and what is wrong is not so easy to determine. Now, Srila Prabhupada makes a particular point, with which I'll conclude this class after. Prabhupada says that if somebody does something wrong with the conscious intention that I will atone for it and I'll fix it, and that will make my wrong okay, well, that mentality is wrong. See, atonement is something which is talked about in various traditions, various theistic traditions of the world. The idea is, when we are going through the journey of life, at that time, suppose, say, upwards is right action, good action, uplifting action, and downwards is like a degrading action. So suppose we do some bad action. Now what is recommended is, if somebody has done such bad karma, bad action has been done, then it is better that they do some good action as an atonement. Now that atonement can be, that person can fast, that person can use some dana. Generally, yajna, dana, tapa, that is what is considered to be atonement. Yajna, dana, tapa. All these three are considered good actions. So if we do a bad action, we do a good action to atone for it. Now that is, in one sense, a traditional system. But the problem is that if somebody does a bad action, after they do a bad action, they realize, oh, that was bad, I should not do it, and they atone. That is one thing. But if they plan, so if there is, this is a bad action, it's either due to circumstances, it's due to conditioning, it can be circumstantial, it can be conditional, means condition induced. It can be, but then at that time one can do atonement, and then atonement can, in one sense, be a way they neutralize the reactions to their actions. That is okay. But if somebody, this, in the same journey of life, if somebody is doing a bad action and that is intentional, intentional means person knows I'm doing bad, and it's not just the force of conditioning that is making them do that. It is not that the circumstances leave them with no choice, but it is that they consciously know this is bad, but okay, I do this bad, and then they plan, means that person is over here and that person is deliberating. That person is thinking, like a thought bubble. Okay, first I'll do the bad action, and then I will do the good action. And in that way, I will make up for it. So Prabhupada says this is misleading. So in one sense, here Indra was misled by his Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are not necessarily all of them very spiritually wise people. We see that even the Brahmana guided Bali Maharaj wrong. And that was not ordinary Brahmana. That was the Brahmana who had saved his life. That was Shukracharya. Then we also see that a Brahmana, Durvasa, tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj because there's a small apparent violation of etiquette. There was no actual wrong done also. So just because we are getting some guidance from some Brahmana does not necessarily mean that that guidance is right, or just having that guidance will exempt us from the consequences of the actions. See, nobody else can live our life for us. We have to live with ourselves, and we have to live with the consequences of our actions, both the external consequences in terms of the conditions that will come upon us, and the internal consequences in terms of the effect on our morale, the effect on our mind. So ultimately, acting according to dharma. So dharmic action, when somebody wants to do it, dharmic action, that does not mean we outsource. This is outsource responsibility for decision making to someone else. That is not the meaning of dharma. How do I know my action is right? Oh, I was talking with one young person in India. He said, I'm so happy since I've come to Krishna consciousness. I said, oh, that's wonderful. Why is it? He said, now I don't have to think about anything. I just follow my authorities and everything is taken care of. Well, follow your authorities is a good principle, but I don't have to think about anything. That is a dangerous principle. Now, the purpose of following authorities is not to get rid of our intelligence. It is to equip our intelligence for responsible decision making. Dharmic action is not outsourcing the responsibility for decision making. I just follow the authority, so everything is right. No. Even when Srila Prabhupada was following an authority and he came to America, the things were not working out for a long time. And what did Prabhupada say? Prabhupada didn't say, okay, my guru told me to go to America. This didn't work. Let's quit. Let's go back. This didn't work. Try that. This didn't work. Try that. This didn't work. Try that. So, dharmic action means we take personal responsibility for decision making and we take guidance. Ultimately, it's we who have to take decision. And then, first and foremost, it's our responsibility to take decisions. It is not that anybody else is going to, as I said, we have to, nobody else can live our life for us. We have to live our life ourselves. So, if now, should we be following authorities? Definitely. But it is that ultimately the authorities are not going to face the situations we are going to face. Even when we take guidance from our gurus, Diksha gurus or Adiksha gurus, the guidance that they are going to give is meant to help us to make good decisions. It is not that just because if our guru tells us to start this business, does that mean that that business is going to be necessarily successful? No, if we don't have the competence for that business, if we are not practical or pragmatic in choosing wisely, there's no guarantee that there'll be success. The principle that we are following the guru is good, but at a material level, our life works according to certain material principles. And if we don't follow those principles, there are going to be problems. So following this is, we'll make it very careful. I'm not saying that we shouldn't follow authorities. And I'm not saying that all authorities are like Brahmanas who had the Brahmanas who guided Indra. Even when we have good guidance, that does not exempt us from the responsibility to use our intelligence. So it is good decision making. We surrender not by giving up our intelligence, but by using our intelligence. Good decision making, it involves both these factors. Guidance is there, and guidance plus intelligence. So our own intelligence has to be used. And we could say in our spiritual journey, yeah, initially it could be that for decision making, maybe it's 90% guidance, a small percentage intelligence. But if that is how it is going to be at the end of the, as we grow, then that is not healthy. It is, we need guidance, but our intelligence should also be developing. And we don't see that intelligence as we grow. It shouldn't be that we think that, oh, I don't need guidance. Rather, I don't have to depend on guidance all the time. It is by the blessings of the Guru and the Vaishnavas that our intelligence becomes wiser. Our intelligence becomes more equipped. It is not that for every single decision we need to consult our seniors. That's why we study scripture. And major decisions, we should always take guidance, take blessings, but we should be capable of becoming, as Srila Prabhupada said, independently thoughtful. So without guidance, we will tend to be thoughtless. So we will be thoughtless in the sense we'll be impulsive, we'll not be at all thoughtful. But the purpose of guidance is not, in one sense, dependent thoughtlessness. That's what I was alarmed by this devotee. I don't have to think about anything. I'll just follow my authorities. What is happening by this? This is a person is becoming dependently thoughtless and is thinking that this is a good thing. But what if tomorrow the authorities are not there to guide? What are we going to do? It is for us to take responsibility. How should I act? What is the healthy thing to do in this situation? What is the wise thing to do? And when we take responsibility for our actions, even if there are complications that come up, we will take responsibility for dealing with those complications. Srila Prabhupada was told by his Guru Maharaj, preach in the West. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had himself gone to UK, had sent his disciples to UK. But Prabhupada decided that I'll go to America. Both are in the West, but after the Second World War, America had become much more powerful than UK. And that was among the few occasions in world history where the transfer of the superpower status from one country to another country happened without a war between the two countries. That UK was the superpower before the first World War, it was clearly a superpower. After the First World War, some damage happened. After the Second World War, the sun practically set on the British Empire. So there was no war between UK and USA at that time. But anyway, Prabhupada decided to go there. In America, things were not straightforward. But Prabhupada was independently thoughtful. So when he faced complications, what happened was, Srila Prabhupada was independently thoughtful and he faced complications, he dealt with the complications. So Prabhupada chose USA instead of UK for his outreach. And then Prabhupada chose people from counterculture instead of the main culture, you can say. Prabhupada would have liked if main culture means people who are already leaders of society, like say authors, thinkers, philosophers, if they would have come. But and that's what his godbrothers tried to do in UK. They would try to meet some big authors. They try to meet with the members of the British Parliament, and they got some photographs with them. Some of them even came for their talks. But those people not getting transformed. The Prabhupada focused on counterculture instead of not main culture. So then Prabhupada also, from the 1970s, Prabhupada focused much more on India instead of UK. So what was happening by this? Sorry, not of UK, instead of the West. Although his Guru Maharaj had told him to preach in the West, Prabhupada said in 1970 that, from 1970, my Guru Maharaj has told me to preach in the West, and I have done that. But now it is my desire to preach in India. What does that mean? That means that he said, was his desire in defiance of his Guru Maharaj's desire? No. Prabhupada was here being a first-class servant. Uttama Sevaka. Uttama Sevak means what? He saw that ultimately Bhaktivedanta Thakur's desire was not just that you go in the West and give some classes. It is that he create a global movement of bhakti. And that global movement of bhakti, Prabhupada, after traveling across the world, recognized that it would need a foundation in India. Because that is where Mayapur Dham was there. That is where Vrindavan Dham was there. And that's why Prabhupada spent majority of his energy in India. And he let his Western disciples continue his Western outreach. So Prabhupada was definitely independently thoughtful. And he wanted all of us to become independently thoughtful. That does not mean we become independent and we reject guidance. Rather, we recognize that the purpose of guidance is to equip our intelligence. And then we can choose judiciously. So, if just to conclude this point, one is there is only guidance and there is no use of our intelligence. Then there will be an unhealthy dependence. This will be lead to unhealthy dependence. But if there is only intelligence and no guidance at all, then this will lead to, this is intelligence. This will lead to unhealthy independence. Because we will, in the name of using our intelligence, often our intelligence may not be well equipped. Our intelligence may not be wise enough. It may not be pure enough. And then it will lead to problems. So the balance is guidance plus intelligence. That will lead us gradually to become independently thoughtful about how we should function in life. And this proportion of guidance plus intelligence, that will vary according to time, place, circumstance. That will make us, as Prabhupada wanted us, is a healthy, it will make us independently thoughtful. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Went on quite a long journey. But the first point I discussed was that bad things happen to everyone in life. So even if somebody has done everything possible to act properly, I talk about Indra's situation and I compared Indra with Yudhishthir Maharaj. And especially Yudhishthir Maharaj, he had taken Vipra Dharma Achyuta Ashraya. In spite of having it all, still bad things happen to him. So that is just the nature of the world. There is no guarantee that bad situations will not come upon us just because we have taken good choice. We have tried to take good factors into consideration. So then the second, this was the elaborate point I discussed. Then the second point we discussed is that, so when we are functioning in real life, how karma works. Why is it that bad things happen to everyone, even to people who are good people? They have good intentions, they have good guidance. Because kahana karmanogati. Karma works in very complicated ways. And therefore, ultimately, in this connection, I discussed about how gahana, that how one action may not lead to its reaction, it may work very differently. That one action may not immediately lead to the reaction. There are a lot of complications, factors involved. Previous karma comes in. Then we discussed about when Indra was to decide what to do. If you consider Vitrasur's past, you could, with Vitrasur's genealogy, by different perspectives, you could have come to different conclusions. You could have said that Vitrasur is Asura, therefore he has to be killed. He has a Rakshasa form. He's born from a Brahmana, born by a Brahmana's desire, therefore he's a Brahmana. Now, he did not know that he's the soul who is Chitraketu. That he will come to know, or rather Shukadeva Goswami will reveal later. So this is when we take decisions. Why are decisions so difficult to take? Because we don't really know where people are coming from in their past. So then what can we do? We can strive to have this balance of guidance plus intelligence. And then by that, This doesn't necessarily mean that every single good action will have good results. So when I said good actions, sometimes even good actions may not always lead to good results immediately. As has happened with Yudhishthir Maharaj, has happened with Indra. Actually, this was the 5th point. The 4th point I discussed was specifically about atonement. Atonement is meant for to help us neutralize the actions of the negative action that may be done out of conditionings. But if we use it knowingly, intentionally to do wrong, then atonement won't work. The balance of guidance plus intelligence is what will enable us to act wisely in life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes, Lalitangi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranams. Thank you so much. Every class of yours is a gem. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So this is a question regarding the terrible things happening to good people or devotees. And so what is the action of karma in that? And then how to help the devotees? They know karma, they know Krishna's will, but still when a sudden death of a very close family member happens, they are struggling. So how to help them? And also how to, we say that devotional service reduces the sinful reaction, aham tvam sarva papebhyo. So this is how to understand the terrible things happening in the light of karma and Krishna's will.
Okay, so when terrible things happen to even a devotee, how to explain? Well, my personal approach is I practically never talk about the point that devotional service will free us from sinful reactions. Not that I know that it is in a scripture and it is something which somebody asks me questions, I will explain that. But I will not emphasize that. Why? Because it's just like, it's one unknown. We don't know what sinful reactions what karmic baggage we have. And then when suddenly something appears, we tell the person, oh, you actually had a huge debt and it has been minimized. It's like you tell somebody, actually all your loans are cancelled by this. And then that person suddenly gets a $1 million loan bill. You have to pay this. Hey, where did this come from? Then we tell them, actually you had a $100 million loan bill and it's been reduced to 1 million. But that person doesn't know anything. So basically, we shouldn't appear to be over promising and then under delivering, or then justifying, oh, this is like this, this is like that. The Prabhupada, if we look at his classes, he does mention that yes, bhakti will free us from sinful reactions, but that is not the emphasis of his teachings. Why you should practice bhakti? Just practice bhakti because that is the wiser way to live. That is, you are not the body, you are the soul. This is the intelligent way to live. Sometimes if we emphasize things inordinately, then we get stuck with trouble. If we say that, oh, bhakti will give you such higher taste. Yeah, bhakti will give higher taste. But the higher taste may take different amount of time for different people to come. So we focus on the point that yes, bhakti will give us higher taste. But the point is, bhakti is the intelligent way to live. It brings us closer to who we are. It takes us to a better place in this world itself. So the point is, when we encourage people to practice bhakti, we could talk about it from multiple perspectives. That it'll free you, it'll free us from reactions, from karmic reactions. This could be one reason why we may say, oh, you just chant Hare Krishna and be free from all sinful reactions. That could be one reason why we can say we practice bhakti. But this is okay, nothing wrong in that. But as I said, we can't really explain when bad things happen, and bad things happen to everyone. So bhakti can free us to act wisely, to become better beings, to do better things. This is, free us means what? It gives us the knowledge. How does it free us? First, it gives us the knowledge of what is the right action. And then it gives us the purity. As we practice bhakti, our lower desires, our lower conditionings, they go down. So that's how we become freed. So there is clarity, and then there is purity that comes. So Srila Prabhupada, for example, although in the 5th canto there's description of hellish planets, Prabhupada's focus of his classes, he said, when he says give up sense gratification, it is not because sense gratification will take you to hell and you don't want to go to hell. Our focus was, it's temporary pleasure, it's external pleasure, it's superficial to who you really are. You as a soul in a human body is meant, can get so much bigger pleasure. So Prabhupada did not focus on telling us to give up wrong things because they will take us to hell, nor that do bhakti because it will free us from karmic reactions. He said, because that is the way we can act wisely, we can experience Krishna's love, we can enter into, ultimately, wisely means what? We can enter into the world of love, world of, specifically of divine love. Even in this life, we can start reciprocating love with Krishna. We can do service. We can start experiencing his reciprocation. That is the reason we should be practicing bhakti. And that is the reason we want to encourage others to practice bhakti. Now, specifically when somebody goes through some adversities, then at that time, the scripture is filled with people who go through adversities. We have even the Lord himself when he descends to the world. We had Ram Navami recently. When Lord Ram comes to this world, even he, what karma does he have to suffer? We have to go through suffering. Even he goes through suffering. So now the characters in scripture do sometimes ask, why do bad things happen to good people? But the point is, the focus of the scriptural characters is more, when bad things happen to good people, what do good people do? That is the focus. So we try to help others when somebody is going through this kind of situation, that we try to be the support. We try to help them practically, emotionally, intellectually, if it is appropriate at that time. And in this, we follow the example of the Lord himself. Krishna gave philosophy in the Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna also, when Abhimanyu passes away, Krishna does not tell him some esoteric previous life explanation. Oh, Abhimanyu had done this karma and you had done this karma, and because of which this happened and that happened. Yes, since bad things happen to everyone in this world. But the wise people, when they face bad things, they act in ways that make things better, not make things worse. So suffering is just the reality of life. And we have to process it in the best way possible. Generally, yes, you should have faith in Krishna, we may say. Well, that statement is true, but that adversity has become a challenge to their faith because of what we promised in the past. If we had not emphasized, oh, bhakti will free you from all sinful reactions. Now, that means we are not promising, scripture is promising. Yes, scripture is stating, but is scripture emphasizing that? Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu is a whole book of devotion. It is a science of devotion. It does talk about that bhakti will free us from sinful reactions. But is that the reason to practice bhakti? No. That is not the reason to practice. Anya bilahita shunya. Jnana karma dhyanavrat. It is for anukulyena Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna, to enter into the world of love. That same Rupa Goswami who wrote that book, Bhakti will free us from sinful reactions, he saw how his own brother was put in jail. Being good for a person who is a big minister, who is living in prosperity. It was virtuous for that person to go to jail under a brutal ruler who could just kill people indiscriminately. It's horrible. And then he had to use trickery to get out of there. So Rupa Goswami was not such an idealist. He did not know the reality. So Sanatana Goswami didn't just accept when he was in jail. Okay, this is my karma. Okay, but how can I serve Krishna? A bad thing happened to him. Now we can say later on that was for his glorification, that shows his dedication, and that can be an inspiration for us. Yeah, that's all true. But the point is that bad things happened to him also. Rupa Goswami saw this happening to his own brother. Rupa Goswami also, he still wrote bhakti, and so the point of practicing bhakti is we want to connect closer to Krishna. And adversity does not stop us from going closer to Krishna. Adversity can sometimes become the impetus for us to going close to Krishna. So that is what we focus on. Okay.
Thank you so much. I have one more question, but if time permits, if others can ask after that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure. Yes. Hare Krishna, Gail.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm referring to the example of when you were saying that, even when we get good advice from Guru, right? Let's say he advises us to open up a business and we don't have really so much skill or talent for that particular business. So you were saying that, we should not throw out our intelligence. So in such a case, where if we, simply we surrender to the Guru, so we follow his instruction, we open up a business and the business flounders, right? So I'm just wondering, in following the Guru, should we be assessing his instruction by material standards or by spiritual standards? If he has instructed us to open up a business that we don't have the talent for, should we be valuing that instruction based on how it helps us spiritually? Or what should our basis of that evaluation be?
Should we be evaluating the instruction of our Guru materially or spiritually? Well, I think this is the wrong question. The question itself is, what is the purpose of a Guru? The purpose of the Guru is to guide us to move toward Krishna. It is not that the Guru is expected to be omniscient. If a student is going to college, sure, and the student wants to choose engineering, and there's 4 options. Okay, should I choose electronics engineering or computer engineering or instrumentation engineering or civil engineering? So do you expect the Guru to give guidance in that? The Guru is not a career counselor. So the Guru should not presume to be a career counselor also. In fact, this is one of the key principles that we learn in our ISKCON disciples course. That the purpose of the Guru is to give us spiritual guidance. Now, where exactly spiritual and material, the boundary lies, that can be varied. But first of all, in terms of conception, the Guru is not omniscient. It is not that is not the claim of our tradition also. The Guru is connected with Krishna. In terms of that sense, the Guru's intention is always to bring us closer to Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada himself re-strategized. Prabhupada tried certain things. If they didn't work, Prabhupada did something else. I was just talking with Balwant Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada disciple. Balwant Prabhu was the main person whom Prabhupada encouraged to start the political party, In God We Trust. And Prabhupada spoke about it enthusiastically at one particular phase in the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada encouraged Balwant. In fact, Prabhupada said, you can become the next president of America. But then, when Prabhupada found how much money is required to fund a political candidate so that they can have a sufficient reach, so that they can get elected. It is not just about going and giving some speeches. Prabhupada said that if you are a politician, you can criticize other people openly. And you can point out their faults. You can speak. You get forums to speak. But when Prabhupada found that so much money is required, Prabhupada decided that the Lakshmi that we have is always finite. This is better used to print books and build temples and direct Krishna conscious activities. And Balwant Prabhu asked Prabhupada after a few months, Prabhupada, are you no longer enthusiastic about this political outreach, political party? Well, I'm enthusiastic. Just don't ask me for any money. So now what does it mean? It means Prabhupada tried one thing. When he found that this is not working, or the cost of this is too much, he said, okay, no longer do it. And then Balwant Prabhu, he didn't keep trying that. He took up some other services after that. So the idea that the Guru is omniscient is itself something which is questionable. So neither should the Guru presume to be expert in material fields, nor should the disciple expect that the Guru's advice in material fields will be infallible. So that means actually the Guru should not be putting the disciple in a situation where the disciple has to consider, can I obey this Guru, or can I do this business or not? Now, with respect to some devotional services, the disciple may not feel confident. I cannot speak in public. I cannot give a class. The disciple, Guru may say, you try to serve Krishna, you'll be empowered. Abhimanyu did not know how to break out of Chakravyuh. He went into the Chakravyuh only because Yudhishthira told him to. Yudhishthira is a pure devotee. And Yudhishthira told him, yes, go in. But then Abhimanyu died. So when he did not have the competence to break out of Chakravyuh, what happened? Well, there was a consequence of that. The consequence was that he died. Now, we may say, was Yudhishthira wrong in doing that? Well, based on the information that Yudhishthira had, they had a strategy. Okay, you break into Chakravyuh and we will follow you into Chakravyuh. But Yudhishthira didn't have the knowledge that Jayadratha had a special benediction by which he could hold back all the 4 Pandavas apart from Arjuna. Now, if Yudhishthira had that knowledge, Yudhishthira would not have advised him to go into Chakravyuh. He didn't have that knowledge, and there was a result, there's a consequence, a tragic consequence of that action. Now, was it wrong? Well, it depends on how you define wrong. It is that in terms of that Abhimanyu died, that was tragic. But in terms of Abhimanyu departed heroically while fighting a virtuous war, and he became elevated, he became liberated, that was glorious. But that is not the result. They fought a war, it was not that we die and become liberated. That was not the purpose. So we can say that if somebody follows the spiritual master's instruction earnestly, their surrender, the principle of surrender that they're exhibiting over there, that will be noted by Krishna. And at a spiritual level, that will have some auspicious result. But at a material level, the material world works according to material principles. And if we are not expert in particular fields, then now does that mean that we should not follow the instruction of the Guru? No, we have to find out a particular way. Okay, maybe I cannot do this business, but maybe I can find somebody who's expert in this field, and I can get them to do this business. And then we try to, what is the purpose of my Guru in telling me to do this business? Maybe the Guru feels that, I have the ability to earn money, and then rather than just trying to live simply, I can earn a lot of Lakshmi and give that Lakshmi to Krishna. But maybe I can do that with some other job, not necessarily in this job. So following here, we're not talking about defying the instruction of the Guru. It is that having faith does not mean giving up intelligence. Yes, there are extreme situations where, yes, just have faith and don't use your intelligence. Like when Srila Prabhupada wanted the devotees to go to London to do outreach, but there was no resources available. They'd never been to London, and they just went there. And they were living in different places, sometimes in storefronts, sometimes on the road, sometimes in some various places they were living, but they were also using their intelligence. Okay. It was the devotee's idea that George Harrison is such an intelligent, such an influential person. If we can reach him, then we can reach so many people. So Prabhupada at that time didn't even know who George Harrison was. So Prabhupada, they said, yeah, we want to reach out. He said, Prabhupada, who is he? They asked, and they said, yeah, it's a good idea. Prabhupada said. So the point is that even when we surrender our intelligence to follow an instruction, we use our intelligence in following that instruction. So you can put it this way.
Yeah, because that I don't understand. That's what I'm trying to understand. When is it? What does it actually mean to surrender our intelligence if we are also supposed to use our intelligence?
Yeah, see, the point is, one extreme is we surrender our intelligence, we surrender with intelligence. Well, in extreme situations, we can say that we surrender our intelligence first. That comes first. And then even after we surrender, when we are executing a particular instruction, we use our intelligence. Say, if our guru says, go and preach over there, and we feel there are no prospects in preaching over there. Okay, we may just surrender. If it is my guru's vision, I will go and preach over there. But then while we are preaching over there, we have to look at the ground reality. Okay, this is the most likely audience. This is where I have some connections. This is where I can speak. I can connect with these people. We have to use our intelligence. So this can, if we just, if we think surrender means giving up our intelligence, we can get ourselves into a lot of material trouble, which can divert us, which can become an obstacle in our bhakti afterwards.
Yes, in the case where the guru instructed me to open up a business that I don't have talent for, I surrendered to that and just use my intelligence to open up the business as best as I can.
That is not the domain of the guru to give an instruction like that.
Okay.
The guru is meant to give. The guru is not omniscient. If the guru gives an instruction like that, we try to follow it, and whatever works, we can say Krishna will take care of it. But then we have the example that there is a domain of personal life and personal responsibility. When Brahmaji tells the Kumaras to get married, the Kumaras say no, and that is not considered disobedience to their guru. That is their personal life. That can apply another way also. The guru may tell somebody to become a brahmachari, and that person feels, I am not suited to be a brahmachari. That person decides to become a grahastha. Are they disobeying their guru? No, the guru may assess that person based on what that the guru observes. But the person may feel that, I'm not capable of doing this. So there is a domain of personal life where we can take guidance from our guru, but it is for us to take responsibility for our decisions.
So the question therefore really becomes, what is the domain of the guru's instructions? What is the proper domain?
Well, the proper domain of guru's instructions, the guru guides us how to understand scripture, to apply scriptural principles in our life. It is to improve our chanting, to guide us in worshipping the deities, to equip us to do various services, to inspire us to do various services to Krishna. But that does not mean that the guru will train us in the specific skills. See, the whole idea is we all have our swabhava, and this using our intelligence is not outside the domain of devotion. Where does our intelligence come from? It has come from Krishna. And using our intelligence is an expression of our bhakti towards Krishna. It is Krishna who has given us a particular gift of intelligence. And Krishna has not given us intelligence so that we can give it up. Krishna has given us intelligence so that we can give it back to Krishna. By how? By using it constructively. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Swabhava is also considered very important. That the intelligence, that what is our particular innate nature, we try to serve according to that nature. I know devotees who were living in Gurukuls, and their Gurukul teachers told them that you have a Brahmana nature, you just memorize mantras and you do this and you do that. And their Gurukul education was, they experienced no child abuse, but their Gurukul education was pure torture. And they came out of there, and then they're Vaishyas now, and they're doing great in business, and they're doing lots of services. So is the Guru expert enough to identify a person's nature? Well, traditionally, Gurukuls were like with a Guru and a Guru's wife with 5 or 10 students, a small number of students, and they could carefully observe everyone and understand and guide. So The principle of guidance is important, but the principle of guidance does not mean that we give up our intelligence or we give up responsibility for our own decision making. Prabhupada was not like that. Bhakti Thakur did not micro-control Prabhupada, nor did Prabhupada micro-control his disciples. His disciples came up with ideas. Prabhupada will go here. When Prabhupada was in New York, Prabhupada wanted to go beyond New York. But where to go beyond New York? Devotees said San Francisco is a good place. Prabhupada said, yes, let's go there. You go there and then I'll come there afterwards. And that's how it worked. So Krishna has not given us our individuality and intelligence so that we just give it up in the name of Bhakti. He wants us to use it in his service. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank
you.
Can you put the slide back down? So I want to take a screenshot of that. Put the yeah. Can you put it down?
So what I have said could be a little controversial, and different devotees can have different opinions about this. But overall, I talked with several gurus about this. I've talked with several GBC leaders about this. And in general, both the disciples and the gurus have to understand that the domain of the guru is not to micro-control or to guide the minutiae or to guide the specifics of a devout disciples, or not to guide, it's to instruct in the specific of a disciple's life. You know, Prabhupada, for example, expected when he got his disciples married, you marry this person, you marry that person. Prabhupada came from a particular culture where marriage was seen more as an obligation, and you okay, or whoever you are married to, you tolerate the difficulties and you continue on. Prabhupada himself said that he did not find his wife very attractive, but he was faithful, he was diligent in doing his duty. But he found soon that disciples were just not able to live as couples together. They were divorcing. And then Prabhupada said, okay, then he said, as a sannyasi, this is not my business to get involved in marriages. So afterwards, Prabhupada didn't get involved in marriages of his disciples. When you get involved means he did not tell you marry this person, you marry that person. It was very rare. Prabhupada did that in later years of his life. So reality is complex, and Prabhupada wanted, of course, devotees to be guided so that they can move towards Krishna. But the exact domain of what areas to be guided in, that is, it's like suppose somebody is sick. Now, should be asking their guru, should I take allopathic treatment or Ayurvedic treatment? Or should I do, if somebody's got cancer, should I do chemotherapy or radiotherapy? Or this therapy or that therapy? That is, we cannot be expecting the guru to tell us those things. And if the guru tells us those things, do we expect that, okay, because my guru has told me I have to be miraculously cured? No, sometimes some cures work, sometimes they don't work. It is not that the guru is omnipotent and all the complex mechanisms by which the material world works are suddenly going to be suspended to fulfill the instruction of the guru, or to comply according to what the guru has told. Life doesn't work like that. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, Sukhakar Krishna Prabhu.
Oh, I just want your suggestion. I have got Radha Govind Maharaj, I think Gaur Krishna Goswami Maharaj, 11 CDs, which is full Bhagavatam, 1 to 12th canto. So each is 5 hours. So I found it very useful when I'm hearing them making notes. It is making me helpful to go and read the Prabhupada's, which one to go more involved in that. And also, Radha Govind Maharaj had the 84 course, 31 days in the Vrindavan. So those things, I just want to, as a experienced person, should I go through that? It is good. Or somebody say, no, don't listen to like that. But I am going to my Paramount. I'm not going anywhere else.
So you are going where?
No, I am hearing that Gaur Krishna Maharaj.
What about Chaurasi? What about the Chaurasi thing?
Chaurasi course also 31 days.
Sorry, your voice is breaking.
Sir, Prabhu, we can't hear you clearly.
My voice.
Yeah, now you can speak. You couldn't hear anything till now.
Yeah, Chaitanya. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, this Chaurasi course which I am hearing, which is again Radha Govind Maharaj's disciple. I'll tell you his name.
Okay, so now what is the question?
No, I want to know whether I can hear all those things, because some people say, don't hear this and that. I said, I'm hearing from our Sampradaya. I'm not going anywhere else.
No. So Prabhu, this is a very specific question. Now, if somebody is saying don't hear from a particular devotee who is within ISKCON and is speaking within ISKCON, then I would need to know the specifics why somebody is saying like that. And in general, at least for Gaur Krishna Maharaj, I have heard his classes. I know many senior devotees have heard his classes, and he is very devoted. So I don't know why anybody would say like that, but it's as far as that is, I know no ISKCON authority has made a resolution that we should not hear from particular devotees. Generally, they don't make a resolution like that. So unless maybe we can talk separately about this. This is too specific a question.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I am not aware of many things here to answer that question.
Okay.
Yes, Sudhakar.
I will send it to you also, so that you know whom I'm telling.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I think it was a very mind-blowing analogy you explained. I could grasp a few things because I'm just new to this devotional path. I would like to seek clarification on my understanding on the one item.
Yes.
Like on the karma, basically, I think you started talking about the karma, if I understand. So
yes.
From the Vitrasur story or from the graphic analysis, what I understood is that the past karma, for example, in Vitrasur case or Ajamil case, his past karmas are more governing than his current karmas. Which is it right? Can we interfere like that? That's how, though he was born with a demonic body, he was born in a Brahmin lineage, as you mentioned, but his past karmas are so strong or so huge, or you can say his credit card is so high that he was liberated to the Godhead. Same as like Ajamil. This is my understanding. So that is one thing. So at the same time, I also get confused that, or I want to hear from the Bhagavad Gita is that the next life is decided based upon your past karmas also, right? So I'm a little bit confused.
Okay, I got the question. The question is that now Vritrasur's this life trajectory. Vritrasur was. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, I can see. Sir.
This is his previous life as Chitraketu. Actually, let's put it this way. That in his previous life as Chitraketu, he actually rose to a very high level in one sense. No, he was an attached king. And from an attached king, he became an exalted devotee. Like I mentioned, such a devotee that he had the darshan of Krishna also, the darshan of Lord Sankarshan. And he clearly had higher taste. But now in this life, it seems that what the attached king is, at least in the Manav situation, he went to the level of a demon. And it seems that he was living just like a powerful demon. And then suddenly his devotion is revealed. His devotion is revealed, and he goes from there directly towards devotional liberation. So how does this trajectory actually work? This is the trajectory of Vritrasur's life. So before this, when he's attacking the heavens, when he's goading his followers to, when the demons run away, he tells them, fight, don't be cowardly. So he's acting like you could say a Kshatriya. Demons and Devatas, both, they are, to the extent they are kings and rulers, they are Kshatriyas. So he's just goading them to act. So he's acting like in one sense, a typical demon. But suddenly his devotion is revealed and it's manifested like a very high level. So the thing is that how does this work? So basically, this downward trajectory that happened, that was due to Parvati's curse. Sometimes material, now is a curse a spiritual thing? Generally, it depends. Curses and blessings, they are usually material things. That means they change our situation materially. So this downward trajectory that happened for him, that was because he was cursed by Parvati. And he was told to become, he was cursed that he would become a demon. Now, while he was in that demoniac body, that demoniac, every body brings with it certain, you could say, conditionings or certain ways of functioning. So while in a demoniac body, he functioned like a demon. But then his past bhakti was still there. It is not lost. It may be temporarily covered. Krishna in the Gita says that Purvabhyasena tenaiva rhyate yavasopi saha. That by one's past, that whatever one has past practiced in the past, that will prompt one and guide one towards spirituality in the next life. But when will that awakening, that prompting happen? That can vary from person to person. We have the example of Gajendra. So in one sense, this is the spiritual growth of a person from previous life. And on next life, at one level, that person is going to start from here and move onwards. But that person, so that spiritual growth in one sense continues from where they have left off. If they come till here, and the starting point goes from here to the next levels. However, this level may not be manifest at birth. So they may just have like a normal life. It's very rare. Suppose somebody has a child and that child is a great devotee. Child is a great devotee in the previous life, but that does not necessarily mean when the child is born, the child is not going to be crying. The child is going to chant Hare Krishna when they comes out of the mother's womb. It's not likely to happen. Now the child may show some inclinations towards bhakti in the childhood, but sometimes some children may show no inclination toward bhakti in their childhood and they may become great devotees in their adulthood. Some children may show a lot of inclination towards bhakti in their childhood, but in their teenage and adulthood, they may go away from bhakti. Life is complex. But at particular times in the next life, there is that spiritual awakening that happens. So for both Gajendra and Rudrasur, Gajendra's story will be described in the next canto. It is when they were faced with death, when that prospect became inevitable. That's the time when that spiritual awakening happened. And Gajendra chanted prayers by which Lord Vishnu appeared and saved him from death. Rudrasur chanted prayers and accepted that, and he was elevated and liberated. So the specific trajectories are opposite, but the particular awakening of their past spirituality happened at a particular time. So in the case of Rudrasur, to some extent, you could say the previous life's karma in terms of the action that led to Parvati cursing him, that led to the covering of his spirituality for a particular amount of time. But then his spirituality was awakened, and then he took off from where he was in the previous life. So you could say that in one sense, he was never here in terms of his consciousness, he was always here only. And from there only he continued. But that consciousness was not manifested. Prabhupada used the example that suppose somebody is a millionaire and they have a treasure of $1 million buried in their backyard. Prabhupada used the example. The example can be given that suppose somebody has $1 million in a bank account, but they have forgotten the bank account number, they have forgotten the password, and they just can't access. Their money is theirs, it is there in their bank, but they can't access it. So they're digging in their backyard, and accidentally they're maybe doing some gardening, and they dig at a particular point and they hit the treasure. Oh, that's the treasure, it's mine. Or suddenly something happens and they discover the account number, the password, they get the money. So like that, our past spiritual credits they're always with us. They're never lost. But in the transition from one life to another life, the access to our spiritual treasures, so access, it may be temporarily lost. That loss of access is also not permanent. It is temporarily lost. and then the access comes back at a particular amount, at a particular occasion. Is that okay?
Yeah, partially I understand from the story what you said. He is like already God realized with Rasur. So in this case, we can consider like that. For from the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, like us, what I understood, or at least how do you define what is good and bad from the spiritual point of view? I understand that there is only one thing called righteous. You mentioned there is something called righteous action, right? Which is the dharma, or dharma. So what is good and what is bad? How you differentiate what? How you who defines good and who defines bad?
Who defines good and who defines bad? Well, Shastra gives us broad categories of what is good and bad, but then the realities of life are complex, and that's why I said the whole Mahabharata is a search for dharma. What is the right thing to do? So, the subject we have discussed earlier, that what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, that is
Like
determined by three things. It is the content of our action, the intent with which we did the action. So content comes before. Content is actual action. Intent is what comes before the action, and the consequence of the action. So all three factors have to be considered when we make a decision of what is right and what is wrong. Now, for example, say speaking a lie is not a good thing to do. But if some riot is going on and our friend is from a community that is being targeted during the riots, and that friend comes, please save me, and we hide our friend in our house, and if the rioters come and say, is this person here? And do we speak the truth at that? Well, there's another principle over there. Our principle is speaking truth is important, but protecting life is even more important. So the content is important. There is those who focus only on content. They are often said to be people who are. There are different ethical theories. This is the people who are like categorical ethics. If this is right, this is wrong. They focus primarily on the content. You should always speak the truth, no matter what happens. Then there is virtue ethic, or categorical ethics is there. And there is what is called as virtue ethics. Virtue ethics says that, if the person who is doing something is good, telling us to do something is good intention, then that makes the action right. But that doesn't necessarily mean if a person is not a doctor and they try to do surgery, they're just having a good intent is not necessarily going to lead to a good action. And then there are those who are look at the consequentialist ethics. So all three factors, now each of these can be important at different times, and we have to decide based on our broad intelligence. We consider all these factors as much as we can, and then we make a decision. So ethics is in that sense complicated. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, before the battle, he simply said, my intent is to obey my elders, so let me do it. Although gambling can be damaging, but he said that this is what my elders have told me, I'll do that. He focused more on his intent to obey the elders, but then the consequences were terrible. And later on, after the war, he realized that, okay, that if gambling is going to lead me to this thing, then maybe I have to be better prepared for it. Just my intent alone is not a guarantee that everything will work out right. So in general, we have to consider all these three things to determine what is right, what is wrong. Through broad understanding of scripture, through introductory understanding of scripture, we get a broad understanding of what is right and what is wrong. So for example, Prabhupada told us the regulative principles. One of them is no eating meat. But then when the devotees were trying to do outreach in Soviet Russia, and the devotee said, Prabhupada, there is no vegetarian food available over there. Prabhupada said, eat meat but preach. What does that mean? Is it a license to eat meat? No, Prabhupada said that if in emergency situations, if that is the only way you can do the service of sharing Krishna Bhakti, then okay, do what is required for that. Your intent is not to enjoy meat. Your intent is to serve and to subsist. And for subsistence, if that is what is required, do that. That's the exception. And devotees didn't have to do that, fortunately. But the point is that there are times when the content of the action is all important and intent and consequence don't matter. There are times when intent is more important. There are times when consequence is more important. So we have to consider all the factors, and based on that, we decide what is right and what is wrong. So Prabhupada himself prioritized different things at different times. And we could go into Prabhupada's life and analysis, but I think we spent a lot of time. It's a long class already. But these are the broad factors we consider. So the Guru's guidance is meant to enable us to weigh all these factors. Going back to the point of independent thoughtfulness, Krishna was right with Arjuna. And yet, Krishna did not just tell Arjuna, I am God, you obey me, fight. Krishna went through a whole process of ethical reasoning based on philosophical education, by which he could
Hare Krishna. Is Prabhuji audible? He's not audible to me.
No, Mataji.
So that is what Krishna gave Arjuna. And that is what, so even God himself is not simply handing out, do this and don't do this. Krishna himself is setting the example in the Gita of how Krishna equips Arjuna in making sound decisions. And that is why later on, after the Bhagavatam describes that when Ashwatthama is to be punished, Krishna again does not instruct Arjuna. But Arjuna, based on the training, the guidance that Krishna has given, Arjuna is able to make the right decision. And Krishna is pleased by Arjuna's decision about how he deals with Ashwatthama. And afterwards, when Krishna himself departs from the world, then again, Arjuna is able to remember Krishna's words and take the right decision at that time. So this is the process of guidance. So there's no absolute that this is right and this is wrong. There are broad categories of what is right and wrong. But beyond those broad categories, it is for us to take responsibility by considering the various factors. And scriptures, Guru Sadhu Shastra, guide us to take responsibility. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So Granthraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Such a wonderful class, and you were so patient to answer all our questions. We'll end the call here, dear devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyeva patitanam
Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Radhe Radhe.
Gauranga, Nityananda.
Radhe Radhe.